The radio crackled to life at 6:47 a.m. All units, we have a code K9. Delta is missing. Last seen at the station kennels at 0600. German Shepherd, 7 years old, 75 pounds. Sheriff's K9 unit. Considered highly trained and potentially dangerous if approached by civilians. Lieutenant Catherine Brennan pulled her Crown Victoria into the Oceanside Pier parking lot as the sun broke through the marine layer. The fog hung thick over the water, turning the morning into something grey and uncertain. She'd been a cop for 26 years. She'd seen missing kids found safe. She'd seen bodies pulled from the ocean. She'd seen good men break under pressure and bad men pretend to be saints. But a missing police dog. That was new. 2 patrol units were already there when she arrived. The officers stood at the entrance to the pier, hands on their belts, talking in low voices. Deputy Kowalski, 28, and Eager spotted her first. "Ma'am, we got a visual. End of the pier. Civilian male elderly with the dog." Brennan felt her jaw tighten. "Is Delta showing aggression?" "No, ma'am. That's the weird part. He's just sitting there, with the guy, like they're old friends." She started walking. The wooden planks of the pier were damp with sea spray. Her boots made solid, rhythmic sounds that cut through the morning quiet. Behind her, 3 deputies followed, spreading out in tactical formation without needing to be told. Training took over when the brain couldn't make sense of things. The pier stretched 200 yards into the Pacific. At the far end, she could see the silhouette of a man on a bench. And beside him, unmistakable, even in the fog, the dark outline of a German Shepherd. Brennan raised her hand. The deputies stopped. She studied the scene for a long moment. The man wasn't restraining the dog. There was no leash, no collar in his hands. Delta sat close to him, leaning against the man's leg in a posture that spoke of comfort, of trust, of something that shouldn't be possible. "Sir," Brennan called out, her voice firm but not hostile. "That's a Sheriff's Department K9. I need you to step away from the animal." The man didn't move. He was older. 60, maybe 65. Grey hair cut military short despite the years. A faded flannel jacket over a white t-shirt. Jeans that had seen better days. Work boots that had walked a lot of miles. He sat with his shoulders slightly hunched, one hand resting on the dog's back. "Sir." Brennan tried again, moving closer now. "I'm Lieutenant Brennan. That dog is sheriff property. He's trained for police work. I need you to move away slowly." The man finally looked up. His eyes were tired. Not the tired of a bad night's sleep. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight for years, from seeing things most people never saw. Brennan knew that look. Her older brother had that look. Right up until the day he put his service pistol in his mouth and pulled the trigger. "I didn't take him," the man said quietly. His voice had gravel in it. "I was just sitting here. He came to me. That dog doesn't just go to strangers." "I know." The way he said it made Brennan pause. Delta's ears twitched. His head turned toward the approaching deputies, and his body shifted, not aggressive, defensive. He moved slightly in front of the man, placing himself between the stranger and the uniforms. "Delta, heel," Brennan commanded. The dog's ears flattened. He looked at her, then back at the man. He didn't move. Kowalski spoke up behind her. "Ma'am, Delta's never ignored a command before." "I'm aware, deputy." She took another step forward. Delta's lips pulled back just enough to show teeth. Not a snarl, a warning. The man's hand moved to the dog's head, gentle. "Easy, boy, easy." And the dog relaxed. Not completely, but enough. Brennan's instincts were screaming now. Something was wrong here. Wrong in a way that didn't fit any scenario she'd trained for. "Sir, I'm going to need you to tell me your name." "Garrett Hayes." "Mr. Hayes, do you know this dog?" A long pause. The ocean moved beneath them, steady and indifferent. "I don't know," Garrett said slowly. "Maybe. A long time ago. Dogs don't remember from a long time ago. Some do." The certainty in his voice made her study him harder. The military haircut wasn't a fashion choice. The way he sat, even relaxed, had discipline in it. The way his eyes scanned the deputies, tracking positions without seeming to spoke of training that became instinct. "Are you a veteran, Mr. Hayes?" "Army. 1st Cavalry Division. Medically retired 1991. Gulf War era." Brennan did the math. That would make him around 62 now. "And you're saying you knew this dog years back?" "I'm saying I knew a dog that looked like this one, that moved like this one." Garrett's hand moved along Delta's back and he paused. His fingers touched something beneath the dog's tactical vest. "That had a mark like this one." Brennan moved closer slowly, watching Delta's reaction. The dog watched her but didn't move to stop her. Garrett lifted the edge of the vest. Beneath it, in the short fur along Delta's left shoulder, was an old scar, 3 inches long, shaped like an irregular V, healed years ago. "What kind of scar is that?" Brennan asked. "Shrapnel," Garrett said quietly. "IED blast. February 1991. Outside Kuwait City." The air seemed to go still. "Mr. Hayes, his name was Delta then too, K9 2847. I was his handler. We were on patrol. He detected the IED before we got to it, alerted. Protocol was to pull back and call EOD, but the lieutenant wanted to push forward, said we were losing daylight." Garrett's hand trembled now, still touching that mark. "Delta wouldn't move, kept blocking my path. The lieutenant ordered me to control my dog. I tried to pull him back, and that's when the second IED went off, the one we didn't see. Delta jumped, pushed me backward, took the blast." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I woke up in a field hospital 3 days later. They told me Delta didn't make it. They told me he died saving my life." Brennan felt something cold move through her chest. "That's not possible," she said, but her voice had lost its authority. "I know." Garrett looked down at the dog. "I buried that dog. I mean, I didn't bury him. They said there wasn't enough left to send home, but I buried him in my head. I've been carrying him for all these years." Delta made a sound. Not quite a whine. Something softer. He moved closer to Garrett, pressing against the old man's leg, and then did something that made every deputy on that pier go silent. He lifted his right paw and placed it deliberately on Garrett's knee. Garrett stared at the paw. His breathing changed. Faster, shallower. Brennan recognized it. Panic attack. PTSD response. And Delta recognized it too. The dog pressed harder against Garrett's leg. Steady. Grounding. The paw stayed on the knee-firm pressure until Garrett's breathing started to slow. "I trained him to do that," Garrett whispered. "When I was having episodes. In country. He'd put his paw on my knee, give me something solid to focus on, something real." He looked up at Brennan, and there were tears in his eyes now. "I never taught another dog that. I never told anyone about it. It was just something between me and Delta." Brennan pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, this is Brennan. I need you to run a military working dog number, K9 2847, Handler Sergeant Garrett Hayes, service dates 1989 to 1991. Static. Then the dispatcher's voice. "Running it now, Lieutenant." 30 seconds of silence. The ocean, the wind, the sound of Garrett's uneven breathing. "Lieutenant, I have the record. MWD K9 2847, designation Delta, German Shepherd. Handler Sergeant Garrett Hayes, 1st Cavalry Division. Dog status shows KIA, February 1991, Kuwait." Brennan looked at the dog sitting peacefully beside Garrett. "Dispatch, what's the microchip number on our K9 Delta?" "Stand by." More silence. "Microchip number is 982012345678 Can you run that through the military database?" "Lieutenant, that's a military chip format. Our Delta has a civilian registration from 2015 when he joined the department." "Run it anyway." A longer pause this time. When the dispatcher came back, her voice had changed. "Lieutenant, the military database shows that chip number registered to MWD K9 2847, Delta, reported KIA 1991. Kowalski spoke up quietly. "Ma'am, if that dog died in 1991, what's sitting on that bench right now?" Brennan didn't answer. She was looking at Garrett, at the way his hand rested on Delta's head, at the way the dog leaned into him with complete trust, at the way both of them looked like they'd finally found something they'd lost a long time ago. "Mr. Hayes," she said slowly, "I'm going to need you to come with us to the station. We need to sort this out." "Am I under arrest?" "No, but that dog is sheriff property. Until we figure out what's going on, he stays in our custody." "No." The word was quiet, but absolute. "Sir, I lost him once," Garrett said, and his voice had iron in it now. "I'm not losing him again." Delta's posture changed. Not aggressive, but ready. His eyes fixed on Brennan, and his body shifted to put himself fully between her and Garrett. "Mr. Hayes, I understand this is emotional, but do you—" Garrett cut her off. "Do you understand what it's like to be told your best friend is dead? To spend years believing it? To wake up every night hearing him in that blast, and then to sit on a pier one morning and have him walk up to you like no time has passed at all?" His voice broke. "I don't know how this is possible. I don't know if I'm losing my mind. But I know that's my dog, and he knows me. And whatever happened, whatever lie I've been living, I deserve to know the truth." Brennan studied him for a long moment. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Kowalski, radio the station.
Tell them we're bringing in Mr. Hayes and Delta for processing. Voluntary cooperation, no charges. Yes, ma'am. She looked at Garrett. You're right. You deserve answers, and I'm going to help you get them. But we do this the right way. We follow the chain. We document everything. Because if someone lied to you about this dog, I want to know who, and I want to know why. Garrett stood slowly. His knees made sounds that spoke of old injuries and hard years. Delta stood with him pressed against his leg. They walked off the pier together, the old veteran, the impossible dog, and a lieutenant who was starting to realize this was bigger than a missing canine.
The sun had burned through the fog now. The pier was bright with morning light, but Brennan had the distinct feeling they were walking into something dark. The station was old, built in the 70s when Oceanside was smaller and the world made more sense. Brennan led Garrett and Delta through the back entrance, avoiding the front desk and the questions that would come. She put them in interview room 2, not because Garrett was a suspect, but because it was quiet, private, and it had a door she could lock. Coffee, she offered. Black if you have it. She left Delta with Garrett. Another violation of protocol. But protocol was already broken the moment that dog refused to leave the old man's side. In the hallway, Kowalski was waiting. Ma'am, what do you want me to do? Pull everything we have on Delta. Acquisition records, training logs, medical history. I want to know where he came from before we got him. And Mr. Hayes? Run him through the VA database. I want to know if his story checks out. You think he's lying? Brennan looked through the one-way glass. Garrett sat in the chair, one hand on Delta's head. The dog sat close, watching the door, but calm. Peaceful in a way she'd never seen him. Delta was a good canine, disciplined, effective, but he'd always been slightly distant, professional. Now he looked like he was home. No, Brennan said quietly. I think he's telling the truth. That's what scares me. She walked to her office and made the call she'd been dreading. The phone rang 3 times before a clipped voice answered. Department of Defense Military Working Dog Registry. This is Lieutenant Catherine Brennan, San Diego County Sheriff's Department. I need to verify a record. MWD K92847 designation Delta. One moment. Typing sounds, then silence. Lieutenant, that record is flagged. Flagged how? I'm not authorized to give you that information. You'll need to submit a formal request through channels. I'm looking at a dog right now with that microchip number. A dog that's supposed to be dead since 1991. More silence. Lieutenant, I'm going to transfer you to my supervisor. The line clicked. Hold music. Something patriotic and tinny. Then a new voice. Male, older, authority in every syllable. This is Colonel Marcus. You're inquiring about K92847. Yes, sir. I have a dog in my custody with that chip number, and I have a veteran who claims to be the original handler. The dog's status is KIA Lieutenant, has been since 1991. With respect, sir, the dog is sitting in my station right now. A pause. What's the veteran's name? Garrett Hayes, Sergeant 1st Cavalry Division, medically retired, 1991. She heard the sound of typing. Lieutenant Brennan, this is a complicated situation. I'm going to need you to keep that dog in custody. Don't release him to anyone. Don't let the veteran leave with him. We'll send someone to collect the animal.
Sir, I need to understand. This is classified, Lieutenant. I can't discuss it over an unsecured line, but I need your word that dog doesn't leave your facility. Something in his tone made her hand tighten on the phone. How long until your people get here? 4 hours? Maybe less. And the veteran? Keep him there if he's willing to stay. If not, get his information and let him go. But the dog stays. That's non-negotiable. The line went dead. Brennan stood in her office looking at the phone. Her years in law enforcement had taught her to recognize when she was being handled, when information was being controlled, when someone was lying. She walked back to interview room 2. Through the glass, she watched Garrett and Delta. The old man was talking quietly, and the dog's ears were forward listening. She opened the door. Mr. Hayes, I need to ask you something. When they told you Delta was KIA, did anyone ever show you remains photos, anything to confirm it? Garrett shook his head. They said he was too badly damaged, said it would be better if I remembered him the way he was. I got his tags in the mail 3 months later. That was it. Do you still have the tags? Every day for all these years. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal case. Inside on a chain were 2 dog tags. Worn, scratched, but readable. Delta K92847, MWD, 1st Cav Div.
Brennan picked up one of the tags. On the backhand etched in careful letters, G. Hayes. I put my initials on them, Garrett said quietly, so he'd always know who he belonged to. She set the tag down carefully. Mr. Hayes, I just spoke with the Department of Defense. They're sending people to collect Delta. They say his status is classified. Classified? Yes. He's a dog. I know. Garrett looked at Delta.
The dog looked back that intelligent gaze that saw more than most people gave him credit for.
What aren't they telling me? Garrett asked. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She sat down across from him. 4 hours until they get here. In that time, I want you to tell me everything, every detail you remember about Delta, every mission, every moment. Because if someone lied to you about your dog being dead, I want to know why, and I want evidence. Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then he started talking. He told her about receiving Delta in 1989, fresh from training. Both of them young, both of them thinking they were invincible. He told her about learning to work together. The way Delta could detect explosives from 50 yards, the way he never missed, never faltered. He told her about the small things, how Delta hated the heat but loved the work, how he'd sleep with his head on Garrett's boots, how he'd tilt his head when Garrett talked to him like he was trying to understand every word. He told her about the night patrols, the close calls, the times Delta's nose had saved the whole unit. And he told her about the last mission. February 12th, 1991. Patrol outside Kuwait City. Tensions running high. Everyone exhausted. Everyone wanting to go home. The IED that Delta found. The lieutenant who didn't want to wait. The order to move forward. Delta's refusal. The argument. The second device they didn't see. The blast. Garrett's voice went flat when he described it. The clinical monotone of someone who'd told the story to therapists and doctors and VA assessors until it stopped feeling real. But his hand never left Delta's head, and Brennan believed every word. When he finished, she asked the question she'd been holding. Mr. Hayes, why were you at the pier this morning? I go there sometimes, early, before the crowds. It's quiet. Good place to think.
How often? 3-4 times a week? Been doing it for years? Same bench? Usually. Brennan felt pieces clicking together. And Delta went missing from our kennel at 6 a.m. The pier is a mile from the station. He would have had to run straight there, like he knew where to go. Garrett met her eyes. You think he was looking for me? I think that's exactly what happened. I think somehow this dog has been in this area for years, and I think this morning something made him decide he was done waiting. The radio on her belt crackled. Lieutenant, you have a call on line 3. Says it's urgent. Department of Defense. Brennan and Garrett exchanged a look. She picked up the phone on the interview room wall. Brennan? Lieutenant, this is Colonel Marcus again. Change of plans. We have a team in your area. They'll be there in 30 minutes. I need you to have the dog ready for transport. 30 minutes. You said 4 hours. We expedited.
This is a priority situation. Colonel, I have questions, and they'll be answered after we secure the asset. Have the dog ready, Lieutenant. That's an order. With respect, sir, you don't have authority to give me orders. I'm county law enforcement, not military. A pause. When he spoke again, his voice had gone cold. Lieutenant Brennan, you have a 23-year-old nephew, Marine Corps, currently stationed at Pendleton. Would be a shame if his career hit complications. The threat hung in the air. Garrett was on his feet before Brennan could respond. Did he just threaten you? She held up a hand, keeping her voice level. Colonel, if you just threatened a law enforcement officer, I'm going to need you to repeat that statement for the record. No threat, Lieutenant. Just a reminder that cooperation benefits everyone. 30 minutes. The line went dead. Brennan set the phone down slowly. Her hand was shaking. Not from fear, from rage. They threatened your nephew? Garrett asked quietly. They did. Are you going to give them Delta? She looked at the dog, at Garrett, at the tag still sitting on the table. No, she said. I'm not. Then what are we going to do? Brennan pulled out her personal cell phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 5 years. It rang twice. Brennan? That you? Yeah, Tommy. It's me. I need a favor. Name it. I need a lawyer. Veterans advocacy. Someone who doesn't back down from DOD. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind that involves classified dogs and lies that go back decades. A low whistle. I know a guy. Maxwell Thorne. Represented that Navy SEAL who blew the whistle on the black site. He's mean as hell and he doesn't lose. Want me to call him? Please.
And Tommy, tell him we have less than 30 minutes. On it." She hung up and looked at Garrett. "Mr. Hayes, this is about to get messy. If you want to walk away, I'll understand.
But if you stay, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Garrett stood straight. Military posture despite the years and the pain. "I stayed alive in a war zone because I trusted my dog. I think I can trust you, Lieutenant." Delta stood too pressing against Garrett's leg. The three of them stood in that interview room, and Brennan felt the weight of what was coming. Outside, she heard vehicles pulling up. Too soon, too fast. The door to the station opened, and everything changed. The men who walked through the station door weren't wearing uniforms. Black SUVs, dark suits, the kind of deliberately nondescript appearance that screamed federal. Brennan watched them through the window of her office, her jaw tight. 4 of them, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of military background. The lead was older 50s with silver hair cut close to the scalp and eyes that missed nothing. He walked straight to the front desk like he owned the building. "I'm here for the K9, he said. Not a request, a statement of fact. The desk sergeant Morrison looked past him to Brennan's office. She shook her head once. "I'm sorry, sir. You'll need to speak with Lieutenant Brennan." "Then get her." Brennan took her time walking out. Small act of defiance, but it mattered. These men came in expecting compliance. She wasn't going to give it easily. "I'm Lieutenant Brennan, and you are—" The man pulled out credentials. "Private Contractor ID, Walters Security Solutions. Raymond Walters. We're here on behalf of the Department of Defense to retrieve classified property." "You mean a dog?" "I mean classified property that was erroneously transferred to civilian law enforcement." Brennan crossed her arms. "That dog has been with my department for 10 years. He's not classified. He's a retired K9 who serves warrants and does community outreach." Walter's expression didn't change. "Lieutenant, I have paperwork authorizing immediate transfer. We can do this cooperatively, or we can involve federal marshals. Your choice." He held out a folder. Brennan took it, scanned the documents. They looked official. Signatures, seals, Department of Defense letterhead. But something was off about them. The dates didn't line up right. The authorization codes were formatted wrong. She'd seen enough federal paperwork to know when something was manufactured quickly. "These documents require a judge's signature for immediate seizure," she said. "I don't see one. We have verbal authorization. Not good enough. If you want that dog, you come back with proper documentation. Until then, he stays in my custody." Walters stepped closer. His voice dropped low, meant only for her. "Lieutenant, I know about your nephew. I know about the complaint filed against him last month, the one that's currently under review. Would be unfortunate if that review went the wrong way." Brennan felt her blood go cold, then hot. "That's the second time today someone's threatened my family. I don't respond well to threats, Mr. Walters." "Not a threat. A reality check. There are bigger things at play here than you understand. Give us the dog. Walk away. Everyone goes home happy." "No." The word hung in the air between them. Walters studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You're making a mistake, Lieutenant. But it's your mistake to make. We'll be back, with proper documentation, and then you won't have a choice." He turned and walked out, his team following. The SUVs pulled away from the curb with deliberate slowness. Kowalski appeared at Brennan's elbow. "Mom, what just happened?" "We just made enemies of some very connected people. How's that record search coming?" "That's the weird part. I found Delta's acquisition paperwork from 2015. Says he came from a K9 training facility in Arizona. But when I called them, they have no record of selling us a dog." "None." The woman I talked to was confused. Said their dogs go to military and federal agencies, not local law enforcement. She's pulling their records, but she sounded pretty certain they never placed a dog with us. Brennan felt the pieces shifting in her mind. "So our official paperwork says we got Delta from a facility that doesn't remember selling him to us?" "Yes, ma'am." "What about his medical records?" "That's even weirder. His first vet check with us shows he's approximately 5 years old. But if he's actually the same dog from 1991, he'd be—" Kowalski did the math. "Way too old. That's impossible. Keep digging. And get me everything you can find on Walters Security Solutions. I want to know who they really work for." She walked back to interview room 2. Garrett was sitting on the floor now, back against the wall. Delta lay beside him, head in the old man's lap. They looked like they'd been sitting that way for decades. "They left," Brennan said. "But they'll be back." "I heard," Garrett said quietly. "Thank you for not giving him up. Don't thank me yet. They'll get a court order, and when they do, I won't have legal ground to stand on. Then we need to figure out what's really going on before they come back." Brennan sat down against the opposite wall, unprofessional, undignified. But this whole situation had gone past protocol. Talk to me about Delta's capabilities. What made him special? Garrett's hand moved slowly through the dog's fur. His nose. I've seen a lot of canines. Even the good ones miss sometimes. Delta never missed. Not once in 2 years. If there was explosive material within 50 yards, he found it. What else? He was smart. Not just trained. Actually intelligent. You could see him thinking. Problem-solving. Most dogs, they learn commands and they execute. Delta understood context. Knew when to break protocol if the situation called for it. Like this morning, when he refused to attack you. Yeah, like that. Brennan pulled out her phone and started searching. Military working dog programs, classified canine operations, anything that might explain a dog that should be dead. She found archived news articles from 1991, the Gulf War, coalition forces pushing into Kuwait. And then she found something that made her stop. Mr. Hayes, do you remember a program called Operation Echo? No, should I? I'm looking at a declassified memo from 1991, brief mention of a canine program, experimental, testing new detection methods. It was shut down after the war ended. She scrolled further. It says here that the program focused on dogs with exceptional olfactory capabilities, dogs that could detect not just explosives but chemical weapons, biological agents, things beyond normal canine training. Garrett's hand had stopped moving. Delta could do that. They tested him once on nerve agent traces. He detected them at concentrations so low the equipment barely registered. The memo says the program was classified because of the detection methods. Something about the training being controversial. Controversial how? Brennan looked up at him. It doesn't say. That part's still redacted. Delta lifted his head ears forward. A second later, Brennan heard it too. Footsteps in the hallway. Quick, urgent. Kowalski burst through the door. Ma'am, you need to see this. He had a laptop screen facing toward them. On it, a scanned newspaper article from the Los Angeles Times, February 1991. The headline read, Military Working Dog Survives IED Blast Awarded Commendation. Below it, a grainy photo. A German shepherd bandaged being presented with a medal by an army colonel. The caption, MWD Delta, credited with saving his unit from an IED attack, receives recognition despite serious injuries. The dog is expected to make a full recovery. Garrett stared at the photo. His hands started shaking. They told me he died. They sent me his tags. They said there was nothing left. Keep reading, Kowalski said quietly. The article continued. Delta, a 4-year-old German shepherd, detected the explosive device minutes before his unit would have triggered it. When a secondary device detonated unexpectedly, Delta sustained injuries but is recovering at a military veterinary facility in Germany. His handler, Sergeant Garrett Hayes, was also injured in the blast and has been returned stateside for treatment. Brennan felt her stomach drop. Mr. Hayes, when did you receive Delta's tags? May 1991, 3 months after the blast. This article is dated March 1991, 1 month after. It says Delta was alive and recovering. The silence in the room was absolute. They lied, Garrett said, his voice hollow. They told me he was dead while he was in a hospital somewhere. Why would they do that? Brennan kept reading. There's a follow-up article, June 1991. It says Delta was moved to a special operations unit. No further details available due to security classification. She looked at Garrett. They didn't let him die. They took him, put him in some black program, and they let you believe he was gone. For all these years, Garrett whispered, I grieved for him. I had nightmares about not being able to save him, and he was alive the whole time. Delta whined softly and pressed closer to Garrett. The dog seemed to sense his distress. Brennan's phone rang. She recognized the number. Tommy's lawyer friend. This is Brennan. Lieutenant Maxwell Thorne. I hear you've got yourself a situation involving a classified canine and some federal overreach. That's putting it mildly. I'm 15 minutes from your location. Don't let anyone take that dog until I get there. And don't let your veteran leave. I'm going to need to talk to both of them. Understood. One more thing. I did some digging on Walters Security Solutions. They're a contractor outfit that does cleanup work for DoD. When the military has a problem they want to make disappear quietly, they call Walters. Cleanup work. Assets that aren't supposed to exist. Programs that got shut down but left loose ends. That kind of thing. If they're after your dog, it means someone very high up is worried about what that dog represents. Brennan looked at Delta. What does he represent? Proof. Evidence of a program that shouldn't have existed. Whatever they did with that dog after 1991, they can't afford to have it come to light, which means they can't afford to have the dog examined by independent veterinarians, or his DNA tested. You think there's something wrong with him? I think there's something they don't want anyone to know about him. Get me samples, blood, hair, anything, before they come back for him. The line went dead. Brennan stood up. Mr. Hayes, I need your permission to have Delta examined by our veterinarian. Full workup, blood tests, x-rays, everything. Why? Because if there's something about Delta that they're trying to hide, we need to know what it is, before they take him and we lose our chance. Garrett looked at the dog. Delta looked back calm and trusting. Will it hurt him? No. Standard medical examination. Then do it. 20 minutes later, Delta was in the station's veterinary clinic. Dr. Margaret Sullivan, the department's canine veterinarian, worked quickly and efficiently. Brennan watched through the window. Garrett stood beside her, arms crossed tight against his chest. He's cooperating, Dr. Sullivan called out. Vitals are strong, heart rate normal for a working dog, respiratory function excellent. She drew blood, took hair samples, ran her hands over Delta's body, checking for abnormalities. His muscle tone is incredible for a dog this age. Usually we see some deterioration. He's like a dog half his age. She moved to examine his teeth, then stopped. Lieutenant, you need to see this. Brennan entered the exam room. Dr. Sullivan was holding Delta's mouth open, pointing to his molars. See these wear patterns. This dog is not 7 years old. How old? Based on tooth wear, bone density in his jaw, and the condition of his gums, I'd say at least 15, possibly older. Garrett's voice came from the doorway. How old can a German Shepherd live? Average lifespan is 10 to 12 years. Exceptional dogs might make it to 14 or 15. Beyond that, we're talking about medical anomalies. Dr. Sullivan ran a handheld scanner over Delta's shoulder where the microchip was embedded. That's strange. This chip is registering 2 frequencies. 2. Most microchips transmit on a single frequency. This one has dual transmission. I've only seen that in experimental tracking chips. Military grade. She moved the scanner along Delta's body. There's another one. In his left hip. Smaller. Different frequency. 2 microchips. 3, actually. There's a third one embedded in his right rear leg. Brennan felt her pulse quicken. Why would a dog need 3 tracking chips? You wouldn't, unless you wanted to track him through different methods, or unless different agencies tagged him at different times and didn't remove the old chips. Dr. Sullivan drew more blood, worked in silence for several minutes. Then she turned to her computer, pulled up the results. Her expression changed. This can't be right. What? His cellular regeneration markers. They're elevated, significantly. I'm seeing enzyme levels that, Lieutenant, this dog's body is repairing itself at an accelerated rate, like nothing I've seen in a natural canine. What does that mean? I don't know, but it might explain why he's in such exceptional physical condition. If his cells are regenerating faster than normal, he'd age slower. Recover from injuries faster. Live longer. Garrett spoke up, his voice tight. In Kuwait, after the blast, I was told Delta had injuries that should have been fatal. Shrapnel in his lungs, broken ribs, internal bleeding, but that newspaper article said he made a full recovery. Dr. Sullivan looked at him. Mr. Hayes, normal dogs don't recover from injuries like that, even with excellent veterinary care. Something about this dog's biology is different. They did something to him, Garrett said slowly. After they took him, whatever that classified program was, they did something to make him heal faster, live longer. I need to run more tests, genetic screening, detailed cellular analysis, but that's going to take time we might not have. A commotion erupted in the hallway, raised voices, the front desk sergeant arguing with someone. Brennan moved to the door and saw Walters back in the station. This time he had 2 men in actual federal marshal uniforms with him, and he was holding papers. Lieutenant Brennan, Walters called out, we have our court order. Federal judge signed 1 hour ago. You're required to turn over the K9 immediately. Brennan took the papers. They looked legitimate this time. Proper formatting, actual judge's signature. But the speed bothered her. Getting a federal judge to sign an emergency order in under 2 hours. That took serious pull. I need time to verify this with the court. You can verify while we're loading the dog. We're not leaving without him. Maxwell Thorne chose that moment to walk through the front door. He was exactly what Brennan expected. Late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, and eyes that had seen every trick in the legal handbook. Raymond Walters, Thorne said pleasantly. Still doing the government's dirty work, I see. Thorne, should have known you'd stick your nose in this. My client has rights, and I intend to make sure those rights are protected. Your client has no rights to that dog. It's military property. Was military property, decades ago. Current status unclear, which means we're going to need a proper hearing, with evidence and testimony. Walter's jaw tightened. The court order is an emergency ex parte order based on limited information. I'm going to file an immediate motion to dissolve it, and I'm going to request a full evidentiary hearing, should be scheduled within 48 hours. We'll have the dog by then. Only if you want to be held in contempt when my motion is granted. Judges don't like it when federal contractors try to rush proceedings, especially when there's a veteran involved who was told his dog was dead for decades. Thorne turned to Brennan. Lieutenant, I need to speak with Mr. Hayes, and I need copies of everything. Medical records, service records, that newspaper article, all of it. You'll have it in 10 minutes. Walters stepped forward. This isn't over, Thorne. It never is with you people. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out that door. You're going to wait for the hearing, and you're going to follow proper legal procedure. Because if you try to take that dog by force, I will bury you in lawsuits and media attention. And the last thing DOD wants is media attention on a classified canine program that apparently involves experimental medical procedures. The color drained from Walter's face. How did you... I have sources. Good ones. Now get out of here. This isn't a crime scene. Not yet. But keep pushing, and I'll find something to make it one. Lieutenant Brennan, do you have any reason to believe these men pose a threat to the safety of your witness or the canine in your custody? Brennan understood what Thorne was doing. Yes, Counselor. Based on their aggressive behavior and threats made to my family, I have concerns. Then I suggest you maintain custody until proper legal proceedings can be held. Gentlemen, you know where the door is. Walters stared at Thorne for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out, the marshals following. When they were gone, Thorne turned to Brennan. That bought us maybe 48 hours. After that, they'll escalate. We need everything we can get on that dog and that program. Because when this goes to court, we're not just fighting for custody of a canine, we're fighting to expose something that powerful people want buried. What do you think they did to him? Brennan asked. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's big enough that they're willing to threaten law enforcement and manipulate federal judges. That tells me we're onto something that goes way beyond one dog. He looked toward the exam room where Delta sat calmly beside Garrett. That veteran in there lost decades with his best friend because someone decided a classified program was more important than the truth. I don't lose cases like this, Lieutenant. And I'm not starting now. Brennan's phone buzzed. Text from Kowalski. Found something. Archive room. Now. She excused herself and found Kowalski in the records room surrounded by old filing boxes. What is it? I was going through our acquisition records, trying to figure out how Delta really came to us, and I found this. He held up a file. Thin. Barely a dozen pages. Anonymous donation. 2015. Someone paid for a fully trained canine to be placed with our department. No name on the donation. Just a cashier's check for $50,000 and paperwork saying the dog was combat tested and ready for service. Someone bought us Delta. Yeah, and get this. The cashier's check was issued by a bank in Virginia, 3 miles from the Pentagon. Brennan took the file. They placed him with us. They've been watching him this whole time. But why? If they wanted to keep him classified, why put him in a local police department? Because local departments don't ask questions. We needed a canine, someone offered one for free, fully trained. We didn't look too hard at the gift horse. She flipped through the pages. And they could monitor him, make sure he wasn't showing signs of whatever they did to him. As long as he was just another police dog doing routine work, nobody would notice anything unusual. Until he ran away and found his original handler. Yeah, until that. Brennan looked at the dates on the paperwork. 2015. 10 years ago. Delta would have been around 6 or 7 when he came to them. If he was really the dog from 1991, he would have been much older. Impossible for a normal dog. But this wasn't a normal dog. Get this to Thorne, she said. He needs to know someone at DOD has been tracking Delta for a decade. That's going to be important when we go to court. She walked back to the exam room. Garrett was still there, sitting on the floor with Delta's head in his lap. Mr. Hayes, we found evidence that Delta was deliberately placed with our department. Someone's been watching him for 10 years. Garrett didn't look surprised. They couldn't let him go. Whatever they did to him, he's evidence. As long as he's alive, he's proof of their program. Then why not just euthanize him, if he's such a risk? For the first time, Garrett smiled. It was sad and tired and full of old pain. Because whoever ran that program, they're not completely heartless. They couldn't bring themselves to end a war hero, so they hid him instead, kept him alive but controlled, a compromise between conscience and security. He stroked Delta's ears, but they didn't count on him remembering, didn't count on him recognizing me after all this time. Dogs don't have memory that goes back decades. Normal dogs don't. But Delta was never normal. Even before whatever they did to him, he was special. And I think some part of him never forgot who I was, never stopped looking.
Delta's tail wagged slowly, as if he understood. Brennan's radio crackled. "Lieutenant, you need to see this. Front parking lot." She walked to the window and looked out. 3 news vans had pulled up. Cameras were being set up. Reporters were doing sound checks. "How did they know?" Kowalski asked. Thorne appeared at her shoulder. "I called them. Hope you don't mind. But media attention is the best protection we have right now. Hard for Walters to make a veteran and his war dog disappear when CNN is filming." Brennan watched the reporters setting up. "This is going to get bigger, isn't it?" "It already is. I've got calls from 3 major networks wanting interviews. Washington Post is sending someone. This is the kind of story that goes national." "Mr. Hayes isn't going to like that." "Mr. Hayes doesn't have to like it. He just has to survive it. Because the moment this becomes a public story, Walters and his people lose the ability to make quiet moves. Everything has to be by the book, transparent. And that's when we win." Brennan looked back at Garrett and Delta. The old veteran sat quietly with his dog, oblivious to the storm building outside. For all these years he'd lived with loss, with grief, with the weight of believing he'd failed to save his best friend. Now he had a second chance, and Brennan was going to make damn sure he got to keep it. The first interview aired at 6 p.m. Garrett sat in front of the cameras, looking uncomfortable in a way that made him more credible. He wasn't polished, wasn't media-trained, just an old veteran telling the truth in simple words. The reporter, a woman from CNN with sharp eyes and sharper questions, leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, you're saying the Department of Defense told you your dog was dead for decades?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you never questioned it, never tried to verify?" "I was in a hospital, recovering from my injuries. They gave me his tags. Told me there wasn't enough left to send home. What was I supposed to question? I trusted them." "When did you first suspect Delta might still be alive?" "This morning, when he walked up to me on that pier, when he did the thing I trained him to do, the thing nobody else knew about." The camera cut to footage of Delta. The news crew had been allowed supervised access. The dog sat calm and dignified, occasionally glancing at Garrett with unmistakable recognition. "What do you want to happen now?" Garrett's answer was quiet but firm. "I want my dog back. I want the truth about what happened to him. And I want to know why they thought it was acceptable to lie to a soldier about his partner dying." The interview ran for 6 minutes. By 8 p.m. it had been shared 40,000 times on social media. By 10 p.m. it was trending nationally. The hashtag was simple: "Bring Delta home." Brennan watched it from her office. Thorne stood beside her, arms crossed, a satisfied expression on his face. "That's what I'm talking about. Public sentiment, veteran sympathy, a loyal dog. This is media gold. This is also going to make a lot of powerful people very angry. Let them be angry. Anger makes people sloppy. Sloppy people make mistakes." Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered carefully. "Brennan. Lieutenant, this is General Howard Keating, United States Army retired. I'm calling on behalf of several concerned parties regarding the situation with MWD K92847. General, what can I do for you? You can stop this circus before it becomes an international embarrassment. That dog is classified military property. This media spectacle you're enabling is compromising national security. With respect, sir, I'm not enabling anything. A veteran found his dog. A dog he was told was dead. That's not a circus. That's justice. You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then explain it to me." A pause. She could hear the general breathing, weighing his words. "Operation Echo was a black program, highly classified, still classified. That dog was part of experimental protocols that cannot be disclosed." "What kind of experiments?" "That's classified. So you want me to take a dog away from his original handler because of experiments you won't tell me about? That's not how this works, General." "Lieutenant, I fought in 3 wars. I've made hard decisions you can't imagine. And I'm telling you, as someone who served this country for 40 years, that dog cannot be allowed into civilian hands. The security implications?
Are there any active security implications? Is Delta currently a threat to national security? Silence. I thought not. So what you're really saying is that you're worried about what people will find if they examine him, what they'll discover about what you did to him. This conversation is over.
One more question, General.
When you sent Sergeant Hayes those dog tags, when you told him Delta was dead, did you know that was a lie? The line went dead. Brennan set the phone down. That was a confession, Thorne said. He didn't deny knowledge of the lie, he just hung up. Can we use that? In court, maybe. In the media, absolutely. Kowalski knocked on the doorframe. Ma'am, we've got a situation developing. Protesters outside. Protesters? She walked to the window. A crowd had gathered in the parking lot, at least 100 people. Many wore military patches or veteran caps. They carried signs. Return Delta to his handler dogs. Don't deserve lies. Bring our heroes home. This is getting out of control, Brennan muttered. This is perfect, Thorne countered. Public pressure, media attention, veteran support. Every hour this continues, our position gets stronger. Brennan's radio crackled again. Lieutenant, we have federal marshals at the perimeter. They're ordering the protesters to disperse. She grabbed her radio. Tell the marshals the protesters are on public property and have a right to peaceful assembly. They disperse when they choose to disperse. Yes, ma'am. Thorne smiled. You're getting good at this. I hate this. I know, but sometimes the right thing requires making people uncomfortable. Midnight came and went. The protesters didn't leave. News crews set up camps with portable lights. The story had taken on a life of its own. Brennan found Garrett in the break room drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Delta lay at his feet, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos outside. Can't sleep, she asked. Haven't slept well in a long time. Not about to start now. She poured herself coffee and sat down across from him. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. All right? If we lose this fight, if a judge rules that Delta has to go back to DOD, can you accept that? Garrett was quiet for a long time. I spent years accepting things I couldn't change, accepting that he was gone, accepting that I couldn't save him, accepting the nightmares and the guilt and the empty space where he used to be. He looked down at Delta. I don't know if I can accept losing him again. Not when I know he's alive. Not when I know they lied. If you run with him, they'll charge you. Federal charges. You could go to prison. I know. Is he worth that? Garrett's eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that made her chest tight. Lieutenant, when I was in that hospital in 1991, I wanted to die. The injuries, the pain, the guilt of surviving when others didn't. I was ready to give up. The only thing that kept me going was thinking about Delta, thinking about how he saved me, how he deserved better than me quitting. His voice cracked. And then they told me he was dead, that he died saving me, and I had to keep living with that. Had to make his sacrifice mean something. Do you understand what that does to a person, carrying that weight? I think I do. So yes, he's worth prison. He's worth anything, because I owe him years of life I got to live while thinking he was gone. Delta stirred, lifted his head and pressed against Garrett's leg. The old man's hand found the dog's head automatically. He remembers you, Brennan said softly. After all this time, through whatever they did to him, he still remembers. Dogs are loyal that way, more loyal than people sometimes. A commotion outside made them both look up. Raised voices, the sound of vehicles. Brennan went to the window and felt her stomach drop. 4 black SUVs had pulled up. Not Walters this time, military vehicles, actual army markings, and a man in a general's uniform was climbing out. They're escalating, she said. Thorne appeared in the doorway, phone to his ear. That's General Keating. He's here in person. This just became very serious. General Keating walked into the station like he was inspecting troops. Ramrod straight, grey hair, chest full of medals and ribbons, the kind of officer who commanded respect through presence alone. Brennan met him in the lobby. General. Lieutenant Brennan. We spoke earlier. I remember. Good. Then you understand I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to inform you that MWD K92847 is being remanded to military custody, effective immediately under the authority of the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 1076. Thorne stepped forward. General, I'm Maxwell Thorne, counsel for Sergeant Hayes. Section 1076 applies to active duty military working dogs. Delta has been retired for over a decade. His retirement was never properly processed. He remains on active status.
Convenient that you discovered this administrative error only after a veteran found his supposedly dead dog. Keating's jaw tightened. Mr.
Thorne. I don't have time for legal games. That dog is coming with me tonight. You can file whatever motions you want tomorrow. I already filed them. 3 hours ago. Emergency injunction. Judge Carmichael will be reviewing it first thing in the morning. Judge Carmichael has no jurisdiction over military property. He has jurisdiction over habeas corpus, which is exactly what I filed. You want that dog, you explain to a federal judge why a retired K9 needs to be taken from his original handler under cover of darkness. The two men stared at each other. Decades of experience on both sides, neither willing to back down. Keating spoke quietly. Mr. Thorne, you're making this harder than it needs to be. That dog is evidence of a classified program. Every hour he remains in civilian hands is a breach of national security. Then declassify the program. Simple. You know it's not that simple. I know you're worried about what independent veterinarians will find when they examine him. I know you're worried about what his blood work will show. I know you're worried that whatever you did to extend his life and enhance his capabilities will become public knowledge. Keating went very still. How did you... I have sources, General. Good ones. People who were part of Operation Echo. People with consciences who are tired of the lies. It was a bluff. Brennan could tell. But it was a good bluff. Keating's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. If you have sources from Echo, then you know why this matters. Why it can't come out. Tell me. No. Then we do this in court, with media present, with expert witnesses examining Delta, with every detail of his medical anomalies becoming part of public record. Is that what you want? The General looked past them toward the break room where Garrett and Delta waited. I want to talk to Hayes. Alone. Thorne started to object, but Brennan held up a hand. I'll allow it. But I stay in the room. Non-negotiable. Fine. They gathered in interview room 2. Garrett sat with Delta at his side. Keating took the chair across from them. Brennan stood by the door. Thorne waited just outside, recording device ready. The General studied Garrett for a long moment. Sergeant Hayes, I wasn't your commanding officer, but I knew men like you, good soldiers, men who did their duty. Sir, I'm going to tell you something that's still classified, because I think you deserve to know, and because I'm hoping it will help you understand why this situation is so complicated. He paused, organizing his thoughts. Operation Echo started in 1989. The goal was to create military working dogs with enhanced capabilities, longer operational life, faster recovery from injuries, superior detection abilities. We were facing chemical and biological threats in the Middle East. We needed canines that could work in extreme conditions and survive what normal dogs couldn't. Garrett's hand tightened on Delta's collar. What did you do to him? We didn't do anything to Delta initially. He was a normal dog. Exceptional, but normal. The best of his training class. That's why he was selected for your unit. Then what happened? February 1991. The IED blast. Delta's injuries should have been fatal. We had veterinarians on site who were part of Echo. They were authorized to use experimental treatments in life-threatening situations. What kind of treatments? Keating hesitated. Gene therapy, cellular regeneration enhancement, protocols that were 10 years ahead of civilian medicine. We saved his life, but the treatment had side effects we didn't fully understand. What side effects? He stopped aging normally. His cells regenerate at roughly half the rate of deterioration. Effectively, he ages at about a quarter of normal speed. A dog that should be dead from old age at 12 is still physically healthy decades later. The room went silent. Garrett stared at the General. You're telling me you made him live longer? Not intentionally, just longer lived. Much longer. We don't know his actual lifespan ceiling. He's the oldest surviving subject of the program. How many others were there? 47 dogs received the treatment between 1989 and 1995. Delta is the only one still alive. The others either rejected the therapy or died from complications. And you told me he was dead. You let me grieve for him while you ran experiments. We didn't run experiments, Keating said sharply. We saved his life. And then we had to make a choice. Return him to you and risk the treatment becoming public knowledge, or classify him and protect the program. You chose the program. I chose national security. Yes. Garrett stood slowly. Delta stood with him. General, with respect, you chose wrong. You should have told me the truth, should have given me the choice. You would have gone public. The treatment would have been exposed. Foreign powers would have attempted to replicate it. Do you understand the implications of a technology that can extend life? the military applications, the geopolitical consequences. I understand you lied to a soldier about his dog. Everything else is justification. Keating stood as well. Sergeant, I'm offering you a deal. Let me take Delta. Put him in a secure facility where he can live out his life in comfort. In exchange, I'll arrange for you to visit him, regularly, under supervision, but you'll have access. You can be part of his life again. As long as I keep quiet about what was done to him. Yes. Garrett looked at Delta. The dog looked back with those intelligent eyes that had seen more years than any dog should.
What kind of life is that for either of us, him in a cage, me visiting like he's in prison? It's the best I can offer under the circumstances. It's not good enough. Keating's expression hardened. Then I'll get a court order. I'll have federal marshals remove him by force if necessary. You'll never see him again. Is that what you want? I want the truth to come out. I want people to know what you did. And I want my dog back. You can't have all three. Watch me. The general turned to Brennan. Lieutenant, you're making a mistake backing this man. When this falls apart, and it will, your career will be collateral damage. I've been threatened twice today, General. I'm past caring about my career. I care about doing what's right. What's right is protecting a classified program that could save lives. What's right is honoring the bond between a soldier and his dog. Everything else is politics.
Keating looked between them then at Thorne, who stood in the doorway with a slight smile. You're all making a terrible mistake. Maybe, Thorne said, but it's our mistake to make. See you in court, General. Keating left without another word. When he was gone, Garrett sat down heavily. He looked exhausted, older than his 62 years. Did I just make everything worse? He asked. No, Thorne said. You did exactly right. He showed his hand, admitted to the experimental treatment, confirmed that Delta is evidence of a classified program. Everything he said can be used. You recorded it, Brennan realized. Thorne pulled a small device from his pocket. Every word, perfectly legal in California. Single-party consent for recording. Garrett looked at the recorder. What do we do with it? We leak it, not officially, but we make sure certain journalists get access. By morning, the audio will be all over the news. Public pressure will make it impossible for them to take Delta quietly. Won't that make them come harder? Probably, but it also makes it harder for them to win. Every move they make from now on will be scrutinized. They can't afford mistakes. Brennan's phone buzzed. Text from Dr. Sullivan. Finished full analysis. Results are extraordinary. She excused herself and found the veterinarian in her office, surrounded by printouts and lab results. What did you find? Dr. Sullivan pointed to a chart on her screen. Delta's telomeres, the protective caps on the end of chromosomes that shorten as we age. In a normal dog, his apparent age, they'd be significantly degraded. In a geriatric dog, they'd be critically short. And Delta's are barely shortened at all, like a young dog, maybe younger. She pulled up another screen. His mitochondrial function, the powerhouses of cells, they should show age-related decline. His are operating at peak efficiency. Another screen. His immune system markers should be weakening with age. They're stronger than most dogs half his age. She turned to face Brennan. Lieutenant, whatever they did to this dog, they didn't just extend his life. They fundamentally altered his aging process at a cellular level. This isn't veterinary medicine. This is something else entirely. How is that possible? I don't know. But the implications if this technology exists for dogs, what about humans? What about soldiers? What about anyone willing to pay for it? Brennan felt cold. That's why they want him back. He's not just evidence of a program. He's proof that they've solved biological aging, at least partially. And if that becomes public knowledge, it changes everything. Dr. Sullivan nodded slowly. I've documented everything. Full medical report. It's ironclad. If this goes to court, I can testify to exactly what Delta is, what was done to him. Will you, Lieutenant? I became a veterinarian because I love animals. What they did to Delta might have saved his life, but it was also experimenting on a living creature without consent, using him as a test subject for technologies that have massive ethical implications. Yes, I'll testify. Gladly. Brennan took the report back to Thorne. He read it in silence, his expression growing more serious with each page. This is bigger than I thought, he said finally. This isn't about one dog or one program. This is about illegal human testing, because if they did this to dogs, you can bet they tried it on people too. You think there are human subjects.
I think Operation Echo was the animal testing phase of something much larger, and I think Delta is evidence of how far they were willing to go. He looked toward the break room where Garrett sat with his dog. That veteran in there has no idea what he's stumbled into. He just wanted his dog back. Now he's sitting on the biggest military medical scandal in decades. What do? We prepare for war. Because tomorrow, when that audio leaks and this medical report goes public, they're going to come at us with everything they have. Outside, the protesters were still chanting. Inside, an old veteran sat with his miracle dog. And somewhere in Washington, very powerful people were making very dangerous decisions. By morning, the story had exploded. The leaked audio of General Keating admitting to experimental gene therapy on military working dogs played on every major news network. Dr. Sullivan's medical findings, anonymously released to select journalists, dominated the headlines. Military conducted secret experiments on war dogs. Veterans dog alive after 34 years. Anti-aging treatment revealed. Dodd faces calls for investigation into classified canine program. Brennan's phone hadn't stopped ringing since 6 a.m. Requests for interviews. Questions from other law enforcement agencies. Calls from veterans organizations offering support. The hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. at the federal courthouse. Thorne had been right. The public pressure made it impossible for DOD to operate in the shadows anymore. Everything would be on the record. Everything would be transparent. Garrett sat in the station conference room wearing the only suit he owned. It was old, slightly too big on his frame now, but clean and pressed. Delta sat beside him wearing a new collar Brennan had bought that morning. Not a tactical vest, just a simple leather collar with a brass tag. Delta belongs to Garrett Hayes. You ready for this? Brennan asked. No, Garrett said honestly, but I'm going anyway. The courthouse is going to be packed. Media, protesters. This is going to be a circus. I've been through worse. Thorne entered carrying his briefcase and looking grimly satisfied. DOD just filed an emergency motion to close the hearing to the public, citing national security concerns. Will it work? Garrett asked. Not a chance. Judge Carmichael is old school, First Amendment advocate. He's already denied the motion. Said if DOD wants to claim national security, they can do it in open court where the public can evaluate the claim. What does that mean for us? It means we're fighting on favorable ground. Everything they say, every argument they make will be public record. They can't hide behind classification anymore. The drive to the courthouse took 20 minutes. News helicopters followed them the whole way. When they pulled up, the crowd was enormous. Hundreds of veterans lined the courthouse steps. Some held signs, some just stood in silent support. As Garrett stepped out of the vehicle with Delta at his side, they began to applaud. Not cheering. Applause. Respectful. Solid. Garrett stopped overwhelmed. His hand trembled on Delta's leash. An older man stepped forward. Vietnam veteran by the patches on his jacket. He didn't say anything. Just nodded once. Respect between soldiers who understood what service meant. Garrett nodded back. They walked through the crowd together. Brennan on one side, Thorne on the other. Delta pressed close to Garrett's leg, calm despite the noise and the people. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Standing room only. Judge Carmichael, a man in his 70s with steel grey hair and sharp eyes, surveyed the room with obvious displeasure at the circus his courtroom had become. But he called the proceedings to order with firm authority. This is an evidentiary hearing regarding custody and classification status of a military working dog designation, Delta MWD K92847. I've reviewed the emergency filings from both sides. Mr. Thorne, you represent Sergeant Garrett Hayes. Yes, Your Honor. And the Department of Defense is represented by... A woman stood, early 50s. Expensive suit, cold eyes. Andrea Morrison, Department of Justice, representing DOD interests. Very well. Ms. Morrison, you're arguing that this dog remains classified military property and must be returned to DOD custody. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. The dog was never properly retired. He remains on active status and is subject to military regulations regarding classified assets. Mr. Thorne. Your Honor, Delta was declared killed in action in 1991. For 3 decades, my client grieved for this dog. The military sent him the dog's tags and told him there were no remains. That's not active status. That's abandonment. The dog wasn't abandoned, Morrison countered. He was transferred to a classified program. The declaration of KIA was a necessary security measure. A necessary lie, Thorne shot back. Your Honor, the government lied to a combat veteran about his dog's death. That's not a security measure. That's betrayal. Judge Carmichael held up a hand. Let's establish some facts. Miss Morrison, do you dispute that Sergeant Hayes was told his dog died in 1991? No, Your Honor, but that was done to protect the classification of Operation Echo. What is Operation Echo? I can't discuss that in open court, Your Honor. It's classified. Then we have a problem. You're asking me to separate a veteran from his dog?
based on a program you won't explain. That's not how this works. Your Honor, if you'll allow me to present evidence in camera. No. If this dog is so dangerous or sensitive that he can't be with his original handler, you need to explain why. In public, where we can all evaluate your reasoning. Morrison's jaw tightened. Your Honor, Operation Echo was an experimental program designed to enhance military working dog capabilities through advanced medical treatments. The details remain classified due to national security implications. What kind of medical treatments? She hesitated. Gene therapy.
Cellular regeneration protocols, treatments that extended operational lifespan and improved healing capabilities.
A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Carmichael leaned forward. You experimented on military dogs. We saved their lives. Your Honor, dogs that would have died from combat injuries were given a chance to survive through experimental treatments. Without the consent of their handlers. The dogs were military property. Handler consent wasn't required. Garrett's hands clenched. Delta pressed closer to him, sensing his distress. Mr. Thorne, the judge prompted. Your Honor, I'd like to call Dr. Margaret Sullivan to testify about Delta's current medical condition. Proceed. Dr. Sullivan took the stand, was sworn in, and presented her findings with clinical precision. This dog's cellular structure shows clear evidence of genetic modification. His aging process has been dramatically slowed.
His immune system, cardiovascular function, and cellular regeneration are all operating at levels far beyond what's natural for his age. In your professional opinion, Dr. Sullivan, is this dog a threat to public safety? No. He's a healthy, well-adjusted animal. The modifications don't affect his temperament or behavior. They just affect his lifespan. Is there any medical reason he needs to be in government custody? None that I can identify. He's perfectly capable of living a normal life with proper care. Morrison stood for cross-examination. Dr. Sullivan, you're not a geneticist, are you? No, but I consulted with 3 geneticists in preparing my report. Did any of them have security clearance to review classified medical data about Operation Echo? No. Then how can you be sure there aren't complications or risks you're not aware of? Because I examined the dog thoroughly. Whatever was done to him, it's stable.
He's been living with it for decades without incident. Without incident that you know of. But you don't have access to his full medical history, do you? The government has refused to provide it. Because it's classified. Then declassify it. If there's a medical reason Delta needs to be in custody, show us the evidence. Morrison had no response to that. Judge Carmichael spoke up. Ms. Morrison, I'm inclined to agree with Dr. Sullivan. If you have medical evidence that this dog poses a risk, present it. Otherwise, I'm not seeing a justification for separating him from his handler. Your Honor, the risk isn't medical. It's the information the dog represents. His very existence is proof of a classified program. If foreign powers obtained him. He's a dog, Ms. Morrison, not a document, not a weapon. A living creature who's been peacefully serving in law enforcement for 10 years. If foreign powers were going to obtain him, they've had a decade to try. The risk has increased now that his status is public knowledge. Because your department lied to his handler and got caught. That's not Delta's fault. The judge turned to Garrett. Sergeant Hayes, I'd like to hear from you. Stand up, please. Garrett stood, leaving Delta sitting calmly at his feet. Sir, tell me in your own words what this dog means to you. Garrett took a breath. Your Honor, Delta saved my life. Not just in Kuwait. Every day since. When I came back from that war, I was broken. Body and mind. The only thing that kept me going was believing that Delta's sacrifice meant something. That I had to live well enough to honor what he did. His voice steadied. For decades, I carried him with me. Every decision I made, I thought about whether it would make him proud. He was gone, but he was still my partner, still the best friend I ever had. And now I know he's been alive this whole time, suffering through experiments, being used as a test subject, while I mourned him. Your Honor, I don't blame Delta for what was done to him, but I'll never forgive the people who did it, and I'll never forgive myself if I let them take him again. The courtroom was silent. Judge Carmichael looked at Morrison. Ms. Morrison, I've heard your arguments, and I understand the government's concerns about classified programs. But I'm looking at a man who lost decades with his dog because of a lie. I'm looking at a dog who's been stable and healthy for years, and I'm not seeing a compelling reason to continue this separation. Your Honor, I'm not finished. The government had 34 years to properly classify this dog. 34 years to establish protocols for his care,
You chose instead to lie to his handler and hide him in a local police department. That's not national security. That's negligence. He looked at Garrett and Delta. This court finds that Delta MWD K92847 is no longer military property.
His status was terminated when he was declared KIA in 1991. Any subsequent use of the dog was done without proper legal authority. Therefore, custody reverts to his original handler, Sergeant Garrett Hayes. The courtroom erupted. Cheers from the veterans, gasps from the media. Morrison's face went pale. Your Honor, we will appeal. You can appeal all you want, but until that appeal is decided, Delta stays with Sergeant Hayes. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Garrett stood frozen for a moment, not quite believing what he'd heard. Then he looked down at Delta. The dog looked back, tail wagging slowly, and Garrett felt something break open in his chest. Not pain. Release. The weight of 34 years lifting. He knelt down, and Delta moved into his arms. Brennan turned away, not wanting to intrude on the moment. Around them, veterans were applauding again. Reporters were shouting questions. Thorne was already fielding calls. But in the center of it all, an old man held his dog and finally let himself believe it was real. The steps outside the courthouse were chaos. Reporters surged forward with microphones and cameras. Questions came from every direction. Garrett kept one hand on Delta's collar, the other raised to shield his eyes from the camera flashes. Thorne stepped in front of him, playing interference. My client will make a brief statement. No questions at this time. The crowd settled into expectant silence. Garrett cleared his throat. He'd never been comfortable speaking in public. But he owed these people something. The veterans who'd stood with him. The strangers who'd believed his story. I want to thank everyone who supported us. The judge who listened. The people who demanded the truth. And Lieutenant Brennan, who stood up when it would have been easier to look away. He paused, gathering his thoughts. For a long time, I thought losing Delta was the price of war, something I had to accept and carry. Today, I learned that loss was a choice someone else made, a lie someone else told. That's the part I'm still trying to understand. His hand moved to Delta's head. But I also learned that some bonds can't be broken. Not by time, not by distance, not even by lies. Delta remembered me. After all these years, through everything they did to him, he remembered. His voice cracked slightly. That means something. I don't know what yet, but it means something. He nodded to Thorne, who stepped back in. That's all for now. Thank you. They made their way through the crowd to Brennan's vehicle. The drive back to the station was quieter. Garrett sat in the back with Delta pressed against his leg, staring out the window at the city passing by. Everything looked different now. Sharper. More real. At the station, Kowalski had prepared discharge papers for Delta. The dog's official status with the sheriff's department was being terminated. After 10 years of service, he was finally retiring. For real this time. Dr. Sullivan was there too, with a carrier full of supplies. Food, medications, vet records. Everything you'll need. She handed Garrett a folder. I've included my personal number. Any concerns, any questions, you call me, day or night. Thank you, Doctor. Take care of him. He's special. I know. Brennan walked Garrett and Delta to the parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. What happens now? She asked. I take him home. Figure out what normal looks like. You have a home. Small place. Not much. But it's mine. Has a yard. Delta will like it. And after that? Garrett smiled slightly. I don't know. I've spent so long focused on the past. Might be time to think about the future. Brennan held out her hand. If you need anything at all, you call me. He shook her hand firmly. You saved his life today, Lieutenant. Mine too. I won't forget that. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it, when you could have just handed him over. That took courage. She watched as Garrett opened his truck, a beat-up Ford that had seen better days. Delta jumped into the passenger seat like he'd been doing it his whole life. As they drove away, Brennan felt something settle in her chest. Justice wasn't always clean, wasn't always simple, but sometimes when you fought hard enough it still worked. The house was small, a one-story ranch on the outskirts of Oceanside. Paint fading, lawn overgrown, but it was paid for, and it was quiet. Garrett unlocked the door and stepped inside. Delta followed, nose-working, taking in the new smells. The interior was sparse. Furniture that came from thrift stores. A TV that was 15 years old. Photos on the mantel of people who were mostly gone now. And in the center of the mantel, a frame holding 2 dog tags. Garrett picked up the frame, looked at the tags he'd carried for so long. Then he opened it and removed them from the frame. Delta watched as Garrett knelt down and clipped the tags onto his new collar, where they'd always belonged. "There," Garrett said softly. "Now you're really home." He showed Delta around the house, the kitchen with food and water bowls already set up, the living room with a bed Dr. Sullivan had provided, the back door leading to a small yard with a fence. Delta explored everything with the methodical precision of a trained canine, checking corners, noting exits, old habits from years of service. But when he finished his patrol, he came back to Garrett and sat, looking up at the old man with eyes that held intelligence and understanding, and something that might have been contentment. Garrett sat down on the floor beside him. They stayed that way for a long time, not doing anything, just being together. Outside, the sun finished setting. The house grew dark, grew. Eventually, Garrett got up and turned on a lamp, made a simple dinner, fed Delta, and for the first time in 34 years, he didn't eat alone. That night, Garrett lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Delta had claimed the bed Dr. Sullivan provided, but around midnight, Garrett heard the soft sound of paws on hardwood. Delta appeared in the doorway, hesitant. "Come on," Garrett said quietly. The dog crossed the room and settled on the floor beside the bed, close enough to touch, close enough to protect. Garrett's hand dropped over the side of the mattress, resting on Delta's head. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he fell asleep without nightmares. 6 months later. The small community center in Oceanside was packed. Veterans filled the chairs, some with their families, some alone. At the front of the room, Garrett stood beside a table covered in pamphlets and information sheets. The sign above read K9 Companions for Veterans, a Delta Foundation project. After the court case, after the media attention died down, Garrett had struggled with what to do next. The settlement from DOD, arranged quietly to avoid further litigation, gave him financial stability. But money wasn't purpose. He'd found purpose in a phone call from a young veteran. Army, Afghanistan, severe PTSD. The vet had seen Garrett's story on the news and wanted to know if getting a dog really helped. Garrett had talked to him for 2 hours. By the end, the young man was crying. Not from pain, from hope. That's when Garrett knew what he had to do. The Delta Foundation matched retired military working dogs with veterans who needed them. Dogs that had served paired with soldiers who understood service. It wasn't therapy. It was companionship. Recognition between warriors who spoke the same language. Brennan had helped him set it up. Thorne had handled the legal paperwork. Dr. Sullivan served on the medical advisory board. And Delta was the Foundation's ambassador. He sat beside Garrett, now calm and dignified, in a vest that read Therapy K9. Veterans approached cautiously at first, unsure. But Delta had a way of putting people at ease. He'd lean against them, let them pet him. Sometimes he'd do the old trick, putting his paw on their knee when he sensed anxiety. It worked every time. A young woman approached Garrett, Marine Corps tattoo visible on her arm, haunted eyes that he recognized. "Is it true," she asked quietly, "that your dog was dead for 34 years and came back?" "Not dead, just hidden, but yes." "How did you survive thinking he was gone?" Garrett considered the question. "Badly at first. It hurt every day. But eventually I learned to carry him with me, to let the memory of him make me better instead of bitter. And now that you have him back..." He looked down at Delta. "Now I'm learning that some things are worth waiting for, and some bonds are stronger than any lie." The woman nodded slowly. Then she knelt down in front of Delta. "Can I?" "Go ahead." She reached out tentatively. Delta leaned forward, pressing his head into her hand. She made a sound, half laugh, half sob. "I had a dog. In Fallujah. IED detection. His name was Axe. He..." She couldn't finish. "I know," Garrett said quietly. "I'm sorry. Is he really okay, after everything they did to him? He's different than he was. But he's here. That's what matters." The woman spent 10 minutes with Delta. When she stood up, her eyes were clearer. "Thank you. Come back next week. We're having an adoption event. Retired canines looking for homes. Maybe one of them will be right for you." She nodded and walked away, looking less alone than when she'd arrived.
Thorne appeared at Garrett's elbow. Good turnout today. Getting better every month.
I got a call from DOD this morning. Garrett tensed. And they're shutting down the appeal, officially acknowledging that Delta is your dog. No more legal challenges. What changed? Public opinion. Congressional inquiries. 3 Senate committees are now investigating Operation Echo. They can't afford to keep fighting you while they're defending themselves on Capitol Hill. Good. There's more. They're offering to fund your foundation. Substantial grant. Enough to expand nationally. Garrett's eyes narrowed. Why? Optics. They want to look like they care about veterans. And honestly, your foundation does good work. It's a win-win. I don't want their money. I figured you'd say that. So I negotiated. They fund the foundation through an independent trust. No strings, no control, just money for a good cause. And they publicly apologize for the handling of your case. A public apology? Press release went out an hour ago. Secretary of Defense personally signed it. Acknowledges the error in judgment. Commits to reforming policies on MWD retirements. It's not perfect, but it's something. Garrett thought about it. Tell them I'll accept. But I want one more thing. Name it. Records. Full records on every dog that was part of Operation Echo. Where they are. What happened to them. If there are others still alive, I want to find them. Thorne smiled. Already in the agreement. You'll have access to the declassified files within 30 days. They shook hands. As the event wound down, Brennan arrived. She'd become a regular volunteer, helping with paperwork and logistics. Her nephew, the Marine, had recently adopted one of the canines, a Belgian Malinois named Havoc, who'd served 3 tours before retiring. How'd it go? She asked. Good, really good. We placed 2 dogs today, have 3 more veterans starting the application process. That's wonderful. They watched as Delta interacted with a group of veterans moving from person to person with the patience of a professional. He's good at this, Brennan observed. He's been doing it his whole life, taking care of soldiers. This is just different soldiers. How are you doing? Really? Garrett considered the question honestly. Better. There are still hard days. Still nights when I wake up and have to remind myself he's real. But mostly I'm good. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually good. I'm glad. Me too. As the sun set over Oceanside, Garrett and Delta walked home together, the same route they took every evening, down by the pier where it all started. The pier was quiet now, just the ocean and the fading light. They sat on the same bench, same spot where Delta had found Garrett all those months ago. You know what I think about, Garrett said quietly. Delta's ears perked up. I think about all the years we lost, all the time we could have had. And I get angry sometimes, at the people who took that from us. He scratched behind Delta's ears. But then I think about what we're doing now. The veterans we're helping, the dogs finding homes, the lives getting better because our story came out. And I realize maybe we lost those years for a reason. Maybe we needed to. So we could do this. Delta leaned against him solid and warm. I still don't forgive them. For the lies, for the experiments, for thinking your life was theirs to control. But I'm grateful we found each other again. However it happened, whatever it cost. The ocean moved beneath them, steady and eternal. Garrett pulled out his phone and looked at a photo. The young Marine who'd called him months ago. He'd just adopted a retired MWD, a German Shepherd named Titan. The photo showed them together, both smiling, both healing. There were dozens more photos like it. Veterans and dogs, second chances and new beginnings. All because one dog refused to forget. All because one veteran refused to give up. Come on, boy, Garrett said, standing. Let's go home. They walked off the pier together, the old veteran and the miracle dog, their shadows long in the evening light. Behind them, the sun touched the horizon. Ahead, the future waited. And for the first time in 34 years, Garrett Hayes walked toward it with hope. The end. Final note. The Delta Foundation continues to operate matching retired military working dogs with veterans in need. To date, over 300 placements have been made successfully. General Howard Keating retired from his consulting position 6 months after the court case. He declined to comment on Operation Echo. Lieutenant Catherine Brennan was promoted to captain. She still volunteers with the Delta Foundation on weekends. Dr. Margaret Sullivan published a paper on cellular regeneration in canines that revolutionized veterinary medicine. She credits Delta as her inspiration. Maxwell Thorne continues to represent veterans in cases against the Department of Defense. He has yet to lose a case. And Delta Delta lives quietly with Garrett in Oceanside. He's estimated to be 16 years old now, though he moves like a much younger dog. How much longer he'll live remains unknown, but however much time he has left, he'll spend it where he belongs, home.